G'day there. Welcome to the closing bell on the 6th of April for me. Recording it a day early because of Easter. Hope you're having a good break and not too focused on the markets. And look, stocks are still in limbo. We know the situation there, so I'm not going to spend much time on the sort of US markets or our markets because they are just stuck in the middle of the correction range. We've had that sell-off over the last year. The midpoint of that sell-off is pretty much exactly where we are. So it's at that point of maximum indecision. We're waiting to see whether the 20-month moving average is still stiff resistance for this market, and any weakness, heading back below the 10-month. Look, things can still do that. There's no doubt about that. But we have short-term buying pressure. So if I just switch to the weekly quickly, on this weekly, I just want to point out that last week was a weekly buy pivot. So we had this selling. I told you all about that selling. We had the bank crisis, change of the rules. Fed's central banks stepped in, saved the uptrend. So this uptrend being still intact, and I'm just going over old ground just so new people understand. And so the line's in the sand, 3,800, which is the low of that little uptrend in the short term. Below there, I'm definitely bearish. But just looking at the short term, the weekly uptrend's still intact, and we've just got a weekly buy pivot within that weekly uptrend. So I have to allow this to play out. So that could involve selling pressure down into the buying pressure, and then it could turn up as long as that weekly sort of trend continues, busting out above those highs. It could see a tradable bounce, and maybe that's the beginning of the next big wave higher. It's all still possible the way it's looking, but really stuck in a range, and you're just a bit more skeptical of the buy and sell pivots when you've got a year's worth of this sort of price action. This buy pivot could end up turning into a sell pivot in a week or two, and we remain stuck in the range basically. So but from my point of view is I just have to respect the fact that the weekly trend is up, a weekly buy pivot in place, so I'd expect there to be buying pressure, and then I'm looking at what happens on the breakout. So I'm long, but with a small portfolio, not overly bearish at this particular juncture, but very aware of the monthly situation, still in downtrend, still expecting there to be lots of resistance up around this area, and really need a break above 43.50 to switch from a sort of a bigger picture bearish point of view, I guess. So that's really how it is. Just a very quick one on the stocks for you today. And really it's gold. I was talking about that last week, so let's have a look at that. So this is the longer term rally in gold, the weekly chart. We had a look at it last week, and I was saying, look, I think there's a gap opening up because gold stocks hadn't been rallying, but we've seen a nice strong move higher in gold, and we're nudging up against the all-time high. I think people skeptical that prices can really bust through. And also speculative money really washed out of the small cap sector in the last year. Not many people willing to take on risk in that smaller end. So I think just some value starting to emerge, and if gold can really bust up through the all-time high, some of those small cap gold stocks that are making money, and even the high cost ones, their margins can really expand quite dramatically. So you can see a big move. And we got that good, nice rally over the week this week, and a lot of those little stocks took off. One of the stocks I went into up 20% already, which isn't bad for a week's work. And I think there could be more to come. So just analyzing this for you. This is, from 2016, 2017. Just want you to note, I'm just showing you from an education point of view how these things move. And you see this initial wave, and I've got the buy and sell zones traced out there for you. I just want you to note the way prices move. You know, a retracement which shakes everyone out who's been trying to buy it into that buy zone, and just note the price action returning to that point of control over and over, which is the midpoint. So we have movement, you know, from the buy zone to the point of control, from the sell zone of that wave, point of control, sell zone, point of control. It went up again, didn't take out the high of the wave. Selling pressure came in again, not quite to the point of control. And then even another wave, which would have got a lot of people bullish and sucked a lot of people in. And what did it do? All the way back to the point of control and almost to the buy zone again there. But what happens is you often get all of this work, and look, it could have had, you know, false breaks of the edge of the range, which is also a possibility, and revisit the point of control. But often you'll have all that work and you'll sort of get a final retest of that point of control, which, you know, takes most people out, or people are sick of it. And then it's ready to move and have its next wave. And from that point of view, you know, this actually was one wave up through here. Just a strong wave all the way to the higher. And just note how on this next wave, if we're just looking at this wave higher in gold, look where the correction came back to over this last few years. You can see the low, which was only months ago, late 2022, bang on the point of control there of that wave higher. So we've come back and retested that point of control of the wave, which you'd like to see, and great support there, and then taking off again to the upside. Now, we are still in that danger zone, aren't we, of, you know, that sort of sell zone area, which is where I expect to see selling pressure. And so we are sort of there still. I really do need to see it bust out above those highs to really get that sense of price action potentially carrying on to that next wave higher. You know, if we're looking at this in the very big picture and thinking about these waves coming back, taking off, correcting to the point of control, and then next wave, this is the sort of idea that I'm looking at and thinking about with gold that is potential here. So, you know, allowing this to continue, but knowing that there is a risk that the music could stop and we could see, you know, another, yet another sort of wave to the downside. But things are shaping up quite nicely. Just this weekly trend, you know, I'm just following that weekly trend, and you'll see, you know, nice, strong weekly uptrend all through there. Once the weekly trend turned down, you know, we had lots of work done, but the weekly trend's just a good thing to keep an eye on, saying when the momentum is looking all right, weekly trend up there, weekly trend turns down there, weekly trend going up. So really, until I get that weekly trend turning down, I'm going to stay bullish on this. So even if we get a bit of work done back to the moving averages, I'm still thinking it's trying to bust out above that. And you should remember that I've been talking about this old correction ever since we had the false break of that low. I was talking about prices, you know, clearing people out, then the false break, and that's when it should start to trend higher again. So, you know, looking quite constructive from that point of view. And there was one stock that I was showing you last week. I said was looking interesting when I showed you that whole list. And you'll see this week, WGX, Westgold, really having a nice week over the past week. There was last week that I said, look, this is looking pretty interesting. Around 128, that's up at 146 this week, and trying to bust up. So, you know, if I'm looking at that, I'm really analyzing that whole wave higher, where we've seen a little false break of it, and then I'd be expecting prices to sort of move back to the point of control, the midpoint of that wave on this next sort of rally. So, you know, you're always looking at both the upside waves and downside waves. So if we're looking at this, you know, it can still move like this to get there. So it's always, you know, never goes in a straight line. But just the picture now evolving on that one, that it is starting to take shape, and any sort of moves back to the moving averages, probably a good buy. And I'd expect it to, head up towards $2 on this next run if gold can take off. And it's nice that you do have, you know, some pretty good lines in the sand, those lows where it got to, you know, your stop loss is down below those lows somewhere. So it looks pretty interesting, and there's a few little gold stocks out there that have done that. And as I've said, one of the ones we went into was up 20% on the week. So a bit of interest coming back in, and you just got to hunt for those stocks that are going to go for it. Otherwise, join my service and I'll tell you. All right. Well, that's enough, I think, for this week. And I'll come back with more next week, and enjoy your Easter. Cheers.